The call to the member for Denison.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The member for Cowan referred to this words to the effect of this is a good time or a good moment. Respectfully, I disagree. I disagree very strongly. This is a shameful moment. This is a very shameful moment. This is the point in time when the House of Representatives seems set to agree almost unanimously that it is okay to retrospectively legalise offshore processing. This is a shameful thing. Deputy Speaker, excuse me if I sound like a broken record in this place, but I'm going to say it again. We are a fortunate and a clever country. We are a signatory to any number of international agreements. It's beyond time that we start acting like a fortunate and clever country, that we start acting like a signatory to any number of international agreements, not the least of which is the Refugee Convention. We are ethically and legally required in this country that when someone comes to our shores and claims to be fleeing for their life, we are ethically and legally bound to give that person protection, to hear their claim and to give them permanent refuge if their claim is found to be accurate. Now, yes, Deputy Speaker, if their claim is fraudulent, put them on the first plane back home. But the fact is that most people who come to our shores claiming to flee for their life are found to be fleeing for their life. We are bound ethically and legally. Ethically, as a good people, as human beings who should act like decent human beings. Bound legally by all of our international agreements that we've signed up to, like the Refugee Convention, like the Rome Statute, I would add, and I'll talk about that in a moment. When people come to our shores, we give them protection. We should give them protection. We should hear their claims. We should give them refuge. There should not be, Deputy Speaker, mandatory detention. There should not be, Deputy Speaker, offshore processing. There should not be, Deputy Speaker, towbacks. Deputy Speaker, there also should not be any form of temporary visa. If these people are making accurate claims, and most are, they should be given permanent refuge so that they can start their life again, often with their family, in our fortunate and clever and rich country. So, in other words, the regime that has been in place now for a number of years by a number of governments, and which will be agreed to again tonight by the government and the opposition, is downright wrong. We should get rid of it. And when that is a difficult decision to make, then we should be strong. And when it's controversial in the community, we should be leaders, and we should explain to the community what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we shouldn't be playing to the fault lines in the community. We shouldn't be playing to racism and xenophobia and the other weaknesses in an otherwise great country. Where there are those weaknesses, we should be leaders, and we should explain to the community why we're doing the right thing. And we should explain to them how what they believe is wrong and how it can be so very, very different. Deputy Speaker, I referred to the Rome Statute. Of course, much of the attention, quite rightly, up until now has been about our obligations under the Refugee Convention. But there is no doubt that we're also in contravention of the Rome Statute, which is the international agreement which covers crimes against humanity. The fact is, it is a crime against humanity to hold someone indefinitely in detention without trial, and that's what goes on in these offshore places. It is a crime against humanity under the Rome Statute to forcibly transfer anyone to a third country, and that's exactly what we're doing under the Rome Statute, under offshore processing. It is a crime against humanity to hold people in inhuman conditions, and that's exactly what we're doing with offshore processing. This is why, Deputy Speaker, I have made a formal complaint to the International Criminal Court and asked them to investigate the behaviour of this government. And moreover, I would encourage them to investigate the behaviour of other governments, because much of what we do in response to irregular immigrants is the policy of both the Liberal Party, the National Party and also the Labor opposition. I think there is a case to be made at the ICC. I think they should look into the behaviour of a series of governments, starting with this one, when it comes to crimes against humanity. The fact is and I'm pleased the point was made tonight, I think it might have been by the Shadow Minister, that there are currently more people displaced and on the move than at any time since the end of World War II. I'm pleased that point was made. I believe the figure has now passed 50 million people. The fact is we have a global humanitarian crisis, and we should be responding to it in those terms. It's not a border security problem, and frankly I'm sick and tired, and I think a lot of people are sick and tired of hearing people stand up in this place and make out that irregular immigration by boat is a security problem, that somehow these boats are full of terrorists or would-be terrorists. They're not. They're full of desperate souls, most of whom are fleeing for their life. Competent terrorists don't take the rickety road through the people smugglers in Indonesia. They fly out here in their own name with a fresh passport and enter the country legally. That's what happened at 9/11. Not one of those people who were involved in 9/11, not one of those terrorists entered the United States illegally. And it is downright mischievous, downright cruel, nasty for people in this place to be continually talking about these boats being full of evildoers. And even just a moment ago, the member for Cowan was talking about these people who are coming out to Australia and abusing women and children, as though it is an ordinary people in our own community who aren't doing such heinous things. It is wrong to be demonising these people. The fact is that most of them are fleeing for their life. When we hear their claims, they're mostly found to be accurate. And it's interesting, Deputy Speaker, when people come up to me in the street and they start talking about irregular immigration, and they start complaining about what they call illegals or boat people, and I look them in the eye and I say, but hang on, do you agree that if someone is genuinely fleeing for their life, then it's the right thing to give them protection? And just about every time, Deputy Speaker, in fact I think it might have been every time, they say, yeah, of course we should give people protection who are fleeing for their life. Well, it's about time the government and the opposition explain to the community that most of these people are fleeing for their life, and we should respond in exactly that way. Give them protection, hear their claim and give them permanent refuge. If we want to deal with this global humanitarian problem, we need to stop thinking of it as a border security crisis or a border security problem. And what we should be doing is putting in place a sophisticated policy to try and deal with this global problem, starting with trying to calm things down in source countries, doing what we can to create peace in places like Afghanistan and places like Iraq. But instead, what did we do in Iraq, for example? We started a war that's gone for 12 years, that has created the circumstances for the rise of Islamic State and turbocharged people movements out of that part of the world. Instead of settling it down, all we've done is stirred it up, and then we wonder why there's so many people on the move. And we should have a policy that gives genuine and effective assistance to countries of first asylum. But what assistance do we give Iran, for example, host to millions of Iraqis and people on the move from other countries? What assistance do we give to Iran? We set up a security relationship with them. Well, how about we start giving them some aid and some know-how and steering them in the right direction and helping the Iranians to care for the millions of Iraqis who are currently in Iran? What assistance do we give to Pakistan? Next to none. What assistance do we give to countries like Bangladesh, where people have come across the border from Burma? We give these countries of first asylum next to none. And what about transit countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia? Sure, we cooperate to get the people smugglers, and I've got no objection to that, but what other assistance do we give them to help care for and effectively and humanely resettle the tens of thousands of displaced people in these transit countries? Deputy Speaker, this is not a security problem. It's a global humanitarian crisis. And being in breach of the Rome Statute, and by forcibly transferring people to third countries like the Republic of Nauru or Papua New Guinea, and then dressing it up as some sort of, I see in the title, regional processing arrangement. Well, that's misleading in itself. This isn't regional processing. These are like the hulks of 200 years ago. These are where we send our unwanted, to be unseen, unheard. These are the modern-day hulks where you put the people we don't want to have around us. The fact is, these are sovereign states, and we're forcibly sending people to those sovereign states, and that is a crime against humanity in accordance with the Rome Statute. Deputy Speaker, and what is going on here with us trying to pre-empt an interpretation of the law by the High Court? Deputy Speaker, in my opinion, that is fundamentally undermining our system of democracy. The role of the court is to interpret the law. And then our job, the community's job, is to say, OK, we'll obey with it, we'll follow that interpretation and we'll do things differently because we respect the finding of the court. But what's the government doing tonight? With the cooperation of the Labor Party, saying, oh heavens, we've got a problem with the law, so we're going to preemptively and retrospectively change all the laws. In other words, we're going to cook the books. Instead of letting the High Court have a look at the law, interpret it and make a judgment which we can respect, instead of doing that, we're going to cook the books and we're going to keep changing this law till we can find our way around that troublesome High Court, instead of respecting really what its role is. Deputy Speaker, this is a shameful day. It's a really shameful day. And whether it be national security policy or our response to asylum seekers, it's more shameful, more troubling, because it's done with a virtual consensus in this place. I know there are people in this place who would agree with much of what I said tonight. Well, I asked them respectfully, when I call for a division, that they join me. That's what I think people should do. I have enormous respect for the people in this place who share my views. And I have no doubt the member for Fremantle is going to express some concerns with what's going on here as well. I understand the limitations that are on party members, and it's unfortunate. So I don't blame the party members in situations like this. I actually blame the parties for having such a tight control of their members. Because frankly, when it comes to issues like this, whether it be the Liberal Party or the Labor Party, it'd be the grown-up thing to do, the right thing to do, to let their members follow their conscience and represent their communities tonight. Because if there is a division in a little while, and I hope there is, and I'll certainly try and make one happen, the fact is some people will vote quite at odds with the majority wishes of their community. And I don't blame them for it, because they're hamstrung by their parties. I blame the parties and the party system, who really should let their members follow their heart and represent their constituents. I make the point again, Deputy Speaker. This is a shameful day. We are one of the most, maybe the most, fortunate and rich and clever and decent countries on the planet. We are a signatory to any number of international agreements. We signed them in good faith. The men and women who agreed to sign them at the time or ratify them, they did that genuinely. They saw the value in those agreements. Way back when we signed the Refugee Convention, the men and women who led this country then saw the value in that agreement, saw the importance of that agreement. Some years ago now, when we signed up to the Rome Statute, the men and women that agreed to do just that, they saw the value in that. They agreed then, our predecessors agreed then, that to hold someone indefinitely without trial in effectively a jail, they agreed that would be wrong. In fact, it would be so wrong that it would meet the definition of a crime against humanity. The people who signed the Rome Statute, they knew back then that to forcibly transfer someone to a third country should be regarded as a crime against humanity. The people who signed the Rome Statute, they realised then that to hold people who are effectively in our care, to hold them in inhuman conditions, would be wrong. We betray the men and women who signed up to those agreements. We betray them badly by now saying it doesn't matter, that we know better, that we can do things differently, that we can have offshore processing. And I make the point again, they're not regional processing centres. A regional processing centre is something that is set up and run by many countries to deal with a regional issue. These are set up by the Australian government. They're funded by the Australian government. They're run by the Australian government. That regional processing arrangement title in this bill is downright misleading, and it should be removed, and it should be called any number of things. It's offshore processing in other countries. It's forced deportation to a third country. It is a crime against humanity, and the thing should be shut down. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank the member for Denison.